It's trash day, I'm putting you out, it's trash day. Putting you out, it's trash day. Putting you out of my mind. It's trash day, I'm putting you out, it's trash day. I'm putting you out, trash day, I'm putting you out of my mind. Now I'm gonna clean up, now I'm gonna clean up, now I'm gonna clean up the house. I'm taking all your garbage, taking all your garbage, taking all your garbage.
It starts with some beer, so you shouldn't have fear. Two garbage guys with facts, but they both still have tact. It's that time at last for the best damn podcast. It's Can Crusher Day!
And welcome to another Can Crushers. John, I never thought we'd get this interview. Welcome back to English Professor. This is an interview I thought we'd never have before. He retired.
Yeah, he did. Good 3 years ago, maybe more. Somewhere, though, I think in our heart of hearts, we thought there was a possibility he'd come back. It seemed unlikely, but we held out hope, and we were rewarded for it.
And we're talking about Jimmy Nuts, IWC former heavyweight champion, former IWC tag team champion. Jimmy freaking Nuts is back, and we have him on Can Crushers. This is amazing, John. This is going to be amazing.
It's going to be pretty darn good. Settle down. We got a ways to go with this interview. Save your energy.
Okay, but still,
I'm excited too. This is pretty cool.
This is why we continued to go to IWC for the longest time. And if you haven't seen the video, guys, you can go to IWC Network and watch when he made his return on Cage Fury 2019. I'm pushing women and children out of the way.
Mark is not exaggerating. He wanted to be the first one to high-five Jimmy Nuts when he came to the ring.
So, all right, John, let's just get into this interview. I mean, we could talk about whatever, but let's get into the interview with Jimmy, and then we'll wrap this up in a bit.
That sounds fantastic.
Wrestling. A love and a passion we all share. I've started a wrestling brand. The wrestling brand. A brand founded on the aspects of wrestling. Two entities working together to create a product that connect emotionally for people everywhere. Collar and Elbow is the brand. Passion and love for wrestling is the drive. I am Al Snow, and this is Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand.
And welcome back to Can Crushers. I'm still so elated that we have this guy on Can Crushers. John, you know how excited I was. In the opening, we have the former IWC heavyweight champion of the world, the returning Jimmy Nuts. Jimmy, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're pretty excited to have you, and we're not going to waste any time, Jimmy. We're going to jump right in. Let's go back just a couple of weeks ago, Caged Fury. Justin Plummer had a big announcement, and he did a good job keeping a lid on this. We had no idea. And Mark really keeps his ear to the ground, but we had no idea. But right before Mr. Plummer's announcement, out comes Dylan Bostic, being Dylan Bostic. Then you come out. You guys are face-to-face, which, happens in wrestling, and it's one thing if he stands his ground and you stand your ground. But there you are, pouring your heart out to the fans, and he's kind of laughing right at you. What does that say about him? How did that make you feel? Do you think it was in poor taste?
So I would say, obviously, I don't think anyone would care for it and being in that emotional of a moment, that serious of a moment for myself, for someone to be laughing and someone taking it lightly. But that's kind of who Dylan is, right? Like Dylan's not just a fantastic performer, but Dylan's also really good at the mind games. And it kind of caught me off guard. I'm used to kind of someone matching my energy and matching my intensity, and that moment was one of the most important moments of my entire life, and probably one of the most intense moments of my entire life. And for someone to shrug it off and laugh, it kind of threw me off. Kind of threw me off a little bit, to be honest. Didn't change the overall statement message or what I planned on doing that night, but definitely caught me off guard.
Speaking of your plan, what you had in mind for that night, what you have in mind going forward. You've been gone a little over 3 years. So my question to you is, are you focused? And be honest, because I'm sure you have a hit list. I'm sure you have things you want to accomplish. Are you feeling a little scattered right now? Like, where do you start? Or do you have a pretty good plan in place of what you want to do next?
So you don't just sit out for 3.5 years and not have a plan, and you don't think of things, and you don't see things and see headlines. And, a lot of the time that I spent on the sidelines was a difficult task, because you see people that are in the main event, you see people wearing the championship belt, and you want to know if you still have what it takes to go with that person. And there's been quite a few people that held that belt since I've been gone. So I think every single former champion since my time is on my list. And for me, the plan it's still to come back, go through the ropes, and see what I have left. Personally, I don't think it's so much a matter of what's left, but what's improved. I feel great. I do feel focused, and it wasn't one of those things where I came back on a whim, but this has been a very long and very challenging process. So it wouldn't have been for nothing, and I've taken care of all the X and O's in my personal life, so I didn't have to come back to wrestling to be, happy per se, or to feel accomplished. But it's the thing I love most in life. It's the thing I love doing more than anything else, and it's the one thing that I've always been good at. It's the only thing that naturally I felt like I had a talent for. So I came back knowing that I wanted to show people that there's a new level to what I do and who I am.
You mentioned kind of where you left off and some of the champions that have come up since then. You've been in the ring with DJZ. What do you think about where he is right now? And we've seen him on TV. Could that have been you? Is there still a chance that can be you?
Oh, man, I tell you what, what the plan was? The plan was to come back in March in DJZ's last show. That was the plan. But I did not feel like I was ready yet physically. I wanted to put a little bit more icing on the cake, I guess. And as much as that moment would have been so surreal to see DJZ off the way he kind of saw me off whenever we last met, I had to hold back, and I had to do the smart thing, and I had to do the right thing for myself and for all my fans too. I never wanted to come back less than what I was, right? So DJZ, man, that was probably the greatest match of my career, and I did it on one leg, which is really inspiring and is just a testament to how much he brought out of me. And I think it's really cool to see him where he's at. He's always excelled throughout his whole career, though. The guy that came up, in the Pittsburgh area, but was never known for just staying in Pittsburgh. He went everywhere: Mexico, Canada, Japan, worked for TNA. He's done it all. I mean, he's truly like a journeyman where he has seen all facets of wrestling. I think he's the epitome of, what a great wrestler is. And could that be me? Maybe in NXT? I don't know. Admittedly, I was obsessed with that for so much of my life, and obsessed with that for a good portion of my wrestling career. But now it's more about just doing what I love, and that's wrestling. And whether that's at NXT, or if that's on Monday Night Raw, or if that's at IWC, it's all wrestling, right? And it's all my art, and it's all my passion. So if it happens, it happens, kind of thing. If it's meant to be, it'll happen. I'm not concerned with it. I have so many loose ends to tie up in IWC that I'd be a fool to overlook stuff like what I have with Dylan Bostic, or who's wearing the heavyweight title whenever I'm finished with him. So right now I'm focused on the here and now, and that's IWC.
Excellent. You mentioned possibly coming back when DJZ had his last match, which would have been awesome. But this return at Caged Fury, believe me, was no less awesome. So the timing was perfect there too. I think Mark maybe wants to rewind a little bit. Mark?
I do want to rewind, but before we rewind to the way back, again, let's just rewind to Cage Fury. Tell me you heard me mark out, push women and children over when you came out of the curtain. You had to have, right?
Well, I mean, I am vain, so I watched back the video many times, and slowly, each time I watched it, I was digressing from the action in the ring and just staring at Mark jumping up and down, pumping his fist like he won $1 million.
And I did. I did that night.
Man. Yeah, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of things that go through someone's head when they've been gone for 3.5 years, and the crowd has doubled, maybe tripled. And if you retain half of the fans that were there before, maybe only 1/4 of the audience knew me. Other people might have heard the name, didn't have a face to put to it. Not sure why everyone's screaming, "Let's go nuts!" But to see the people who have still been there for 3.5 years be so excited to see me come back and to me to do my thing, I can't think of much in my life that's meant more to me. And because of the reaction I got from the 1/4 of the audience, by the end of the night, I felt like 80 to 90% of the crowd were jumping ship or jumping onto the bandwagon, I guess I should say.
Yeah, you got the new shirts and everything ordered, correct? Are we going to be blowing it up with new merch here shortly?
Yeah, new merch is coming. I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to get it done. Definitely doing wristbands and T-shirts again. They were a hot commodity before, so.
Yeah, we need something new, Mark. Fraternity's gone. I haven't seen Darren De Niro in a while. Britt's not around. So we need some Jimmy Nutt stuff.
Fraternity is. I forgot about those guys. They were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Man. It's fun guys.
Well, we need some new Jimmy Nutt stuff.
All right, yeah, we'll get it done. We'll get it done.
Nice. So, Jimmy, what got you into wrestling? Was it Grandpa? Was it, your mom and dad? As we go into the sour part of the interview a little bit, but let's learn this journey of you. How'd you love this business that we are marks for, and we are marks for you?
For me, one of the big things, I just remember being super young, and I don't know why. I just remember being like, I didn't even know why I knew the name, but I wanted to see Hulk Hogan on TV. And I remember telling my mom, I want to watch Hulk Hogan. And she said, okay, well, wrestling's on tonight. And I was like, great. She's like, your grandpa loves wrestling, so you can watch it with him. So I watched wrestling with my grandfather for the first time. Hulk Hogan this is 1997? So Hulk Hogan was in the NWO. And that is like immediately what grabbed me. It grabbed me because the entire audience cared about this one person. And I knew I wanted to care and wanted to watch what he was doing. And I didn't even know what wrestling was or who he even was as a character or person or anything. I didn't even really know what he did. I just knew Hulk Hogan was important because I had heard people at school talk about him, or maybe I heard it from my grandpa passingly or something like that. I just knew subconsciously that I needed to watch this spectacle of Hulk Hogan. And that is what turned me on to wrestling. And I immediately was sucked into him and the Macho Man. And then, obviously Monday Night Wars were happening. So I got into WWF at the time. And I was super into Kane. I just thought it was such an interesting character because I was a big horror movie fan at like 7 or 8 years old, which shows you what kind of childhood I had, I guess. But I was just infatuated with the Kane and Undertaker characters. And everything was larger than life for me. And I never really fell out of it. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I would spend a lot of time writing up fake storylines or playing this old wrestling simulator called EWR. Oh man, that was like a thing right on like a floppy disk. And everything I did, everything extracurricular after school was always wrestling. If I had to write a paper, it was about wrestling. My senior project in high school was on ECW and how it transcended the culture of wrestling.
Do you still have it?
That's awesome.
Do you still have it?
I don't think I do. But you know what? Maybe I do. I actually probably do. It's probably at my parents' house in an attic in a box somewhere, and I should really pull it out because I am a fabulous writer, believe it or not.
I would love to proofread that paper for you.
Yeah, maybe I'll dig it up. That would be we could just go over it, and you guys can give me red marks. It'd be phenomenal.
Awesome. I look forward to that.
I can't speak English, so it's usually John covering me up, so don't worry about that.
Hey, Jimmy, you mentioned the Hulkster. You said you didn't know a whole lot about him, but his reputation sort of preceded him. we grew up with the early 80s, red and yellow. At what point did you discover that? Were you still a kid? Were you able to look back and see some of the other things he did? Or is that just more so in recent years after you became a wrestler?
No, the first thing, my grandfather said was, Hulk Hogan's a bad guy, but he used to be a good guy. And I'm like sitting there, like, I didn't really I didn't have the concept down of like good and evil. So I was like, well, I don't care if I was cheering for him to cheat. Like, that's how much I cared about Hulk Hogan for no reason. So then he showed me WrestleMania 3 when he body slammed Andre in front of 9 million people, right? Whatever the exaggerated numbers are that people pass around. Andre weighed 800 pounds and he broke his back when he picked him up. And I was like, I'm like 8 and I'm just screaming like, no way. And I'm like trying to pick up all the overweight kids in my class. And so, I kind of immediately knew about, Hulkamania per se, but it was never even about the colors or the character. It was, I guess it was a character, but I was drawn to the person of Hulk Hogan. I don't know.
Yeah, and to be drawn to Hulk Hogan right off the get, it's probably the best way. You could have picked Doink, you could have picked, anybody like that, but Hogan, who's transcended generations, for 30-plus years, he's got it.
Oh, yeah, man. I that's the thing. Like, you guys remember whenever Goldberg beat him on Nitro for the belt, right?
Yeah.
Right.
My sister was screaming. She was also a wrestling fan. She was screaming for Goldberg. Loved Goldberg because we were supposed to, right? We were kids. Like, that's who it's marketed towards. We should be cheering for the good guy. And I was just screaming, he's going to kill him. I was so worried Hulk Hogan was going to die. However old I was. I hope I was sub 10 at that point. And I was just screaming at my TV. And, like, theoretically, the story that was being told, I definitely should have been on Team Goldberg, but I just didn't care. I just didn't care, which is like why he was so much larger than life. That's what's inspiring about wrestling, is that these people are larger than life.
To call you out on one thing you just said, you didn't know the difference between, as we say, heel and faces, yet you're watching gory, kill 'em, shoot 'em up movies, horror films. That's sick and twisted, right?
But you kind of cheer for Freddy Krueger, right?
Yeah, a little bit you do.
Maybe Jason, yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. I just, my first movie I ever watched, my first movie ever was Nightmare on Elm Street. That's like the very first one. That's the movie I remember watching as a kid. So my childhood was just Freddy Krueger and like Degeneration X and NWO. I was doomed.
No, that's all good stuff, man. That's great.
I knew I loved your mother for a reason. We've talked before, but oh my God, she's a wonderful person for raising you with Freddy Krueger and DX.
Yeah, the leash was pretty long on me, but I knew if I did anything out of the rule book that I'd be eating a bar of soap or catching a backhand. So Mama Nuts doesn't play around. Does not play around.
So, Jimmy, where did you get your training from? Because you have a list of organizations you've worked for, but where do you call home, legitimately?
I call IWC home, but I didn't train there. So my training, a lot of people think that I started at a place in West Newton called RWA, but that's not technically true. In 2008, I trained with Shane Shadows. Leslie Leatherman was there for a little bit, but it was mostly Shane Shadows. He's a West Virginia wrestler. If you wrestle in West Virginia, you probably, or in the Hagerstown area, you probably at least heard of him. But like, he's not Dusty Rhodes, right? But that's where I started cutting my teeth, in Kaiser, West Virginia, in the fire hall. And I trained there for about 6 months and started getting squashed for a bit. I remember working with Bill Bain, who's done a couple of WWE spots, and he's been on the indies forever. Really nice guy. And I remember just learning a lot from that. And then I took a little break from that because I was like, transitioning out of high school, because I started training whenever I was still in high school. So graduated high school, got a job, and then I started hitting up promoters trying to get some work. I was rotten. I was terrible. And RWA gave me a chance, and I trained with Ryan Mitchell there. And we did a few shows before he kind of ran me through the bumping and all the general stuff, making sure I knew what I was doing. And then I've had, at least some training before. And then it was kind of a trial by fire after that. Kind of got thrown in and did a lot of work. But a lot of people think that's actually where I started, but that's not true. I think I had like maybe 8 to 10 matches before that. But RWA is where like I first had like my main foot in the door, and they gave me a really good opportunity, and they pushed me, and I got to work with a lot of really cool people there. Sterling James Keenan was still there when I first started. I think I did a seminar with him or something. He had no hand in my training at all, but just to give you an idea of who was there at the time. And yeah, really cool. And then I like to think my polishing came later though. Like I did a lot of the Ring of Honor seminars, like some of the very first ones that they did. And when I started doing those, then I started trying to drive out there in the summer. And I remember I would drive out there with Joe Brooks, and we would just go to the practices that they hold during the week at the ROH dojo with Delirious. And we would drive out like on a Monday, and then we would either get a hotel or we would just stay in our car for a night or two. And then we would go into a gym, shower in the gym, and then eat some Subway. Yeah, we did that, and then we'd just go and pay whatever, and then train more at the Ring of Honor school. So I learned a lot from those seminars. I probably did 3 or 4 of those, and those were so invaluable and taught me a lot more about the finer things of being a pro wrestler, and the little things make the difference between the Hulk Hogan's and the Brutus Beefcakes.
Wow, yeah, good segue right there. I love that.
But yeah, I guess. But I think RWA will always hold a special place in my heart because that's the first place that gave me a shot and saw something in me, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I think whenever I was traveling and I was wrestling in Canada and trying to make every single show I could in 2001 and last half of 2013, 14, and 15. I was always calling IWC my home. I always was trying to represent IWC, and tried to put in make a good banner man, I guess you would call me, for IWC when I went on the road.
Hey, you mentioned Hagerstown, Maryland. Mark and I were there a few years ago, and we met Roddy Piper, one of maybe the nicest guy. He just took extra time with everybody, showed up early so that he could sign for the store owners, and then just took extra time with everybody that came through the door. Really, really cool guy. You had the opportunity to join the ranks of Superfly Snuka and Hulk Hogan and a slew of others who have appeared on Piper's Pit. What was that like, being on Piper's Pit, and what was Roddy like before or after the pit?
Roddy was the coolest guy I've ever met in wrestling. Sometimes your heroes let you down. Roddy was not that guy. Roddy was exceptional. He was better than anything you could have imagined being a fan of his, from being a small child and on. Man, he was just the kindest heart. Like he took time, like you said, to talk to everyone. It doesn't shock me he showed up early. Everyone that was in the segment, he kind of talked to, and he got to know at least a little bit, so he knew what was trying to be accomplished with the segment. And he gave us all our little rub during Piper's Pit. And I remember getting the opportunity to get in his face, and I think I said something along the lines of, like, "Who do you think you are?" And all I could think about was my grandfather, because that was my grandfather's his 2 favorites were Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan, and I just imagine he would have been super, super excited to see his grandson face to face with Roddy Piper talking trash. That was when I was in Team Big League too, so it was it was wild, man. It was a surreal moment for me, and I think that's probably one of the biggest highlights of not only my wrestling career but my life. And he was so cool afterwards, and he took time to talk to us about the match. He got involved in the match, and his son punched me in the face, and I thought he almost killed me. His son was an MMA fighter and was also wrestling, and I believe he hit me with a flying Superman punch at the end of the match, and I don't remember much of it because he blew my head off my shoulders, literally just kadooshed my head off. Damn. And he weighed 145 pounds, and he had been fighting in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. And the dude, he took my head off, man. It was awesome. I got pinned, and I remember just Roddy giving out pointers and just being encouraging. Because a lot of times you hear, you're not going to make it, or you hear this is why the business sucks. Roddy was never like that. Roddy never said, you guys do too much, you guys do this. Roddy'd say, here's what I think. Here's how you can be better. It was always a personal case with him. It wasn't a general ho hum wrestling sucks ever. He was so positive. I wish I would have had more time with him. But I know that there were local guys that he like mentored essentially, and like he's Roddy Piper. He doesn't have to do that for anybody. He could have done anything or talked to anyone he wanted and told people to piss off, and no one would have batted an eye because it's Roddy Piper. But he was not like that at all. He was a great human, and I'm very, very fortunate to have shared ring time with him.
Yeah, like John said before that question, we were so pumped to meet him, but afterwards our hearts grew more because some of him just rubbed off as he's very genuine. He's, like you said, he's a great human being. He really is.
Yeah, he's like, it's one of the very few times where someone, I would consider him a famous person. Like when he passed away, I remember I was at a show in Easton, Pennsylvania, wrestling. I think it was Elite Wrestling or something. And I just kind of, like, my friend sent me a text telling me that he had passed away. I looked it up and it was on the internet. And I just it changed me. Like, it kind of changed my whole day. And it's like one of the only times I can think of whenever like I actually shed a tear for someone. Like I met him and we had a cool interaction, and he definitely, like, he gave me his phone number. Like that was like, that's the kind of guy he was. But like, I wouldn't say me and Roddy Piper were best friends or we were super close or anything like that. But it still like affected me. He touched my heart in a way that I'll never forget. And I think millions of people can say that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So early on in your IWC career, you worked with some pretty big stars now. We'll talk about them and break them up individually. Starting with, you did a lot of work with Dalton Castle, who's tearing up ROH and everywhere he goes. How was it working with Dalton?
He's like the most unique person that I ever met on the independents. And when I got to IWC, he was on top. Like, he was on top. And I remember when he finally got the belt, like, a lot of people had this feeling of, man, this should have happened like 6 months ago, because he was just on fire. And I think I maybe undervalued how contagious his fire is and his passion, and how he was able to get people behind him. It's a very unique thing. Like, if you had 100 other wrestlers try to do what he does, it wouldn't work. He's a special performer, and we always had good chemistry.
Yeah, he sells that amazingly. John's son calls him the Peacock Guy. Ethan called him the Peacock Guy. We lived with that, calling him the Peacock Guy. I don't think many other people could get that over. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jimmy.
He was able to do it in such a short amount of time, too. We wrestled in a Ring of Honor dark match in Pittsburgh. I think it's on YouTube, actually. I don't know if they took it down or not, but I think we wrestled for about 3 minutes, and by the end of the 3 minutes, people were calling, and it was no surprise to me to see him as Ring of Honor heavyweight champion at some point, because that crowd like latched on. And if you can get yourself over in that short a time, you're good. You're golden.
Yeah. You also worked with somebody that's really hot. He's a little bit of a drifter, and it's Elias. You worked with Logan Shulo.
Oh, man. Logan is probably, I would say I have maybe two what I would have considered like really good, great friends in wrestling, like best friends. And when Logan was around, like he became one of those best friends. I don't know if I hope he felt the same way, but it was a guy that when the show was over, I always look forward to hanging out with him after. I remember we went, I think it was after a VOW show, we hit up a bar and we just kind of shot the shit for like 2 hours. And it's one of the more fond memories I have in the locker room or with another guy. I always said if I didn't make it that I wish that he would, because there's not a bad word you can say about that guy. Anyone that says a bad thing about him is an asshole. Like,
wow.
I mean, quite frankly, I mean, I've never even heard anyone say anything bad about him, but I mean, that's literally how seriously I feel. I think he's one of the hardest working guys that ever came through Pittsburgh. I think he has a great look, phenomenal athlete, hell of a fighter, and I miss him dearly. And I try to it's kind of weird, like whenever a friend gets to that stage, right? Because you don't ever want to feel like you don't want them to feel like you're trying to get something from them, which was never the case. I don't think he ever felt that way, but I try to be very cautious with his time. So I still hit him up about once, twice a year and just see how he's doing. I wish him well. Usually it's around WrestleMania time. And
of course it is.
I hit him up I think it was in February. I was like, I saw him work out with Sheamus on YouTube, and I was just so happy to see that he's the same great guy that I remember from years ago. And I did his workout, and it absolutely murdered me. And I just texted him, I was like, dude, your workouts are insane. So, yeah, great guy, absolute favorite, one of my favorite opponents. I wish I didn't suck so much back then. I think we could have had even better battles. But it is what it is, and who knows, maybe I'll see him on Raw or something one day.
There you go. There's always the possibility you can have that awesome match with him.
I'll keep my toes crossed.
For a guy his size and with his look, you might expect him to be one-dimensional, but that's really not the case at all with him.
Freak athlete. So I remember one time we had extra work in at WWE, and you basically get to wrestle in front of William Regal. I don't know if they still do this, but it was kind of like when NXT was still being settled, and you would have a match in front of the agents. And I just remember him doing things in that match, and he looked like he was moving around like a cruiserweight, but he weighed 220 pounds. And it was just you could tell everyone that watched it that day was like, this is a special type of athlete. Yeah, dude's an athletic freak for sure.
Yeah, and he's chiseled. He really
Have you
is
seen
chiseled.
his chest?
Oh my God.
Dude, I pray for pectorals like that.
I pray I can buy a shirt that looks like that.
I hear airbrushing's come a long way.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks a lot. I have two more. One you worked with Gold Dust as well. Dustin, how was that? The son of a plumber, working with him.
You want to talk about someone that might look one-dimensional? That dude is he's 6'5", and again moves so elegantly through the ring. His footwork is excellent, and I don't know, man. He was just in control the whole time. I've always said this to people. I feel like he was the greatest wrestler I've ever been in the ring with when it comes to just being an amazing wrestler and knowing the craft. I don't know if I've ever been in the ring with anyone better. And there's been a ton of people I've been in the ring with that were amazing. And the Steiners, like you said, Dalton, Elias, plenty of people. But I really felt like Goldust. It was it was like you were having moment after moment in there with him, and it was just very, very unique. I never had that experience ever again with anyone.
And then finally, one of our great friends, OVW owner of Collar and Elbow, you tagged with him in a match, Mr. Al Snow. How was it working with the boss, Al Snow?
Yeah, he was cool, man. And he's another guy that makes you look at wrestling in a different way and kind of makes you take a step back and think about what you've been doing. He was all business. He was definitely, he wanted to get in there and get the work done. And I thought we had a really fun night that night. And I learned a ton from him. And he was cool. He gave us time, after and before to get to know us and know our shticks and kind of give us a step forward. So.
Moving forward just a little bit, we've talked about the fact that you've been out of pro wrestling for a few years. Tell us a little bit about maybe what you've been doing, how you've been training to come back, any new hobbies you picked up?
Yeah, so it's been 3.5 years, and the first year and a half was me just trying to figure myself out and get healthy again. There was a lot of stuff wrong with me. My knee was busted up, but I was having a lot of issues with my back and my neck, and both of my shoulders were kind of banged up as well. I had a lot of problems with my AC joints. So it was a long recovery because of that. It wasn't just the knee, and I wanted to get my head right. One of the scarier things that happened to me was after my surgery, I had a seizure, and they couldn't figure out why, and I passed out.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was really rough, and the first thing you think of is oh no, what's wrong with his brain? And luckily, the scans didn't say that anything was terribly incorrect. I am still stupid apparently, but you don't take chair shots and don't lose something. So.
Wait a minute, stop right there. You are not stupid, because tell everybody before you go on with that story what else you've earned since your years off. So you're not stupid.
All right, well, I'll get that. All right. So I guess to kind of think, I was kind of lost finding myself, and I was convinced I'd never wrestle again because my doctor was super against it. Because the injury to my knee was it was caused by like blunt force, right? So the issue isn't the cuts and the jumps and all that stuff. That's hard on it too, but it's the actual going down to the knees, hitting the knees off the mat. All of that stuff is very, very hard on the bone that I've had damaged. So my kneecap is much thinner than a normal person's now. So I never felt like I could go back to wrestling, and I was very nervous that I was going to lose my identity because that's all I had done for like the last 6 years. And it was everything to me. I did it every weekend, and it kind of became who I was. So whenever you take that away, it's very interesting to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what's next? Because I never thought about quitting. I never thought about what's after wrestling. Because for me, I was going to make it. Whether making it was WWE or traveling overseas or just paying my mortgage, wrestling, that was the goal. And I started to box to try to fill that gap and had a pretty good time, but my fiance was not a huge fan of me getting punched in the face, and I'm not someone that can do anything 10%, so I was going to start competing. So I backed off that, and I decided to do jiu-jitsu because it's something I had an interest in a lot. I had done like maybe 1 or 2 open gyms while I was a pro wrestler very early in my career, like 20 to 21. Fell in love with it, but I knew that I wanted to dedicate all of my time to pro wrestling. So I kind of put it on the back burner, and I just jumped in. I jumped in head first, got strangled a bunch, realized that there's a ton of things about grappling that I didn't understand, and constantly was thinking about how it would have helped me a lot in the ring. And got me into really good shape and a really good mental space, because whenever you're rolling around with people who can literally just take your life if they want to, it kind of changes. It makes you humble. It makes you very humble. And along with that, I also decided that I had put a lot of things in my life on hold for wrestling. I had put a lot of career decisions online and a lot of personal decisions online to put myself in a better position. So I knew it was time. So I started to teach myself how to do computer programming and coding. And within about a year, I became a software developer, and that's what I do now. I don't have a degree in software development or computer science, and that is an accomplishment that I am most proud of, because it's not easy at all. I'm still learning every single day, but it was just kind of cool because I feel like 3 years, right, gone. The first 18 months is me trying to find myself again and trying to get in a good mental space. I went through a lot of dark periods there. And then the next 18 months was me climbing Redemption Mountain, climbing that hill and getting back, not to who I was before, but a better version, a balanced version, a much more mentally sound version. And I've learned more about myself in the last 3 years than I did the first 26, 27 years of my life.
The software developer thing, Jimmy, that's amazing within itself. Just teaching yourself, because it's an ever-changing process. Daily, something can change, and if you're not caught up with it, you're 10 years behind again, right?
Yeah, especially with the things I do. I do a lot of web development, and it is like the most fast-changing industry. Like, it's always changing. It's very quick. And for me, it was not only trying, like you said, learning the fundamentals, but also learning everything new that's happening every month. So it's been a big challenge. It's changed the way I think. In a lot of ways, jiu-jitsu's helped me, because jiu-jitsu's really, physical chess. It's problem solving, and so is computer programming, and so is computer science. So to take that and then to be able to network and find people who could help me along my journey, I thank wrestling for that, because it has helped me tremendously being able to talk to people and to get across my points and to sell my ideas and my brand. So wrestling has helped me tremendously, not just in my life with the cool things I've been able to do with, like, being in the ring with Roddy Piper and the Steiner brothers and all that stuff, but also it's helped me know how to be a businessman in and out of the ring.
So we need to talk to the plumbers, and maybe just the three of us and the plumbers can make this happen. Before an event, I think we need to have a jiu-jitsu match between you and John, because John is also in it, and it would just be a Can Crushers original. How about that?
Let's roll, bro. Let's do it.
Hey, I just this past Wednesday, I got my second stripe on my white belt. So
hey, congrats,
just
man.
be forewarned. Thank you.
Congrats, man. It's awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's pretty. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. Go ahead. Good.
It's pretty awesome, isn't it, Jimmy? I mean, you mentioned problem solving. There's a moment you're getting crushed, you're out of breath. But if you could just kind of slow things down and think things through, it could be a pretty fascinating place to be, can it?
Yeah, you find out a lot about yourself whenever someone's squeezing the life out of you or has you in a compromising position where you feel like your shoulder's going to separate. What jiu-jitsu has taught me is how to survive. It has taught me how to survive when I am at my most uncomfortable position or state, and I have no breath, and I feel like there's no hope, to find that inch of space to, maybe shrimp, get your knee in, make a frame, then make a sweep. So it's all building blocks, right, to get back to the top. And it's the Gracies always used to talk about how whenever they would take a step forward, they would never take a step back. So if they were in full guard and they passed to half guard, they're never going back to full guard. It's never happening. And I think that's a really cool attitude to have in life. And I've been doing a ton of no-gi recently, and I've been doing a lot more diverse takedowns and working on my double legs and stuff. And I'm just so excited to jump into the ring and to show off this new level of conditioning I have. I feel like I'm not as physically big as I was, but I still have just as much muscle mass. I'm stronger than I've ever been, and my conditioning is through the roof thanks to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. How long have you been training, and do you have any desire to compete in a local tournament?
Yeah, so 2.5 years I've been at it. I started in West Virginia at Ground Zero and trained with a lot of great people there. Very, very awesome gym. I love that place dearly. And then I moved towards DC, Baltimore area, and I've been training here since I moved. So I would say about a half a year was at Ground Zero, and then the rest was here in this area at a place called Ground Control. My head trainer is Mac Geminis, which I always say his last name wrong, but he's one of the top 5 heavyweights in the world of black belt right now. He's in the top 50 black belts overall, period. So I'm training with a killer. I'm training with literally one of the baddest men on the planet right now. So he treats the class as if it's his training camp to get ready for his competitions. And this guy is a gentleman that fights for money. He is a prize fighter. So that's the kind of intense training I'm going through week in, week out, with a guy that weighs 230 pounds at 6'3", and, just rolled with Gordon Ryan a few months ago. It's insane.
Well, you two are training to kill the world and take on Brock Lesnar or anybody. I can't get past stage 3 of, Sims over here. So I'm not going to mess with you two. Shifting gears, get back into some wrestling. How much are you watching wrestling now? Raw, SmackDown, AEW coming up. I mean, what's piquing your interest as you're studying those guys now?
There's a lot of things that are piquing my interest. Like the wrestling industry kind of had a boom period, right?
Big time.
Look at IWC, triple the crowd, probably because I was gone.
No.
There's a lot of things on the horizon, but I'm really just thinking about IWC right now. And back to the point before, we were talking about John asked me if I was going to compete in any local tournaments. I've been competing. I got me a couple medals even. And
wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I believe I'll be competing September 21st if everything goes right. I've been putting on weight for wrestling so my body can take the beating, but I might cut weight down maybe to 185, and I might be competing at Grappling Industries in Frederick September 21st. So hoping to take some gold home there. So I'm kind of focused on me right now. I'm not really focused on a company per se. There is one person I have an extreme interest in getting in the ring again with, and it's a person I actually came out on top of last time, and that's Wardlow.
Nice.
I feel like Wardlow, like when I've watched the IWC shows while I've been out. I've watched what's happening, getting the landscape. Like I said, this is a very calculated move, a very on-purpose move. And the two people that I saw that interest me the most were Wardlow and Jack Pollock. Jack Pollock is someone that I've been in the ring with many times, and I never quite felt like we got the best out of each other. And I feel like we could really push each other to the next level. Always hard-hitting, very, very physical matches. Probably took a couple years off my life every time we got in there. And for some crazy-ass reason, I want to do it again. I want to do it again really bad, and I would love for it to be with the IWC heavyweight title on the line. Wardlow has evolved. I see this guy doing he's jumping off the top rope with swanton bombs. I think I might have saw him do a standing moonsault at some point. And it's just, we talk about physical freaks like Gold Dust and Logan Shulo. Put Wardlow in that category too. There's nothing that guy can't do in the ring, and I want to see how far he's come. And I want to see if he can push me to maybe more limits. Also, the third person that I've really kept my eye on is Jackson Argos.
I hope you punch him in the face.
I'd like to punch him in the face. He's a very interesting wrestler, and he has a big personality, obviously, and an even bigger mouth. But physically in the ring, that he can do a lot of things, and I think me and him could have a very, very fun time. And I think it's something that the fans would enjoy seeing, and I think it'd be a hard-hitting contest.
I'm going to jump in here with a couple of things. First of all, Mark, I'm going to go ahead and back out of that fight. I didn't realize Jimmy took this quite this seriously.
I do everything 100%.
That's great. No, that's the way it ought to be, man. That's the way it ought to be. And honestly, I would absolutely welcome an opportunity to work out with you someday. That would really be incredible.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Wardlow. You know, we can remember that you were in the ring with him. When you mentioned him, it brought to mind you were in the ring with, I guess, what was it, all of Justin LaBar's guys. And you were pointing them out, singling them out, saying, I beat you, I beat you. You were kind of surrounded there. Where does that fearlessness come from for you? How do you stand in there with one of those guys was about twice your size?
Well, I think you'll probably appreciate this, but in jiu-jitsu, have you ever seen like a smaller, maybe not as big person be able to take down someone else, and you're like, wow, like with technique and skill and physicality that you're able to kind of balance the field. Like when you see a black belt roll with the large white belt, right?
Right.
And the black belt just tosses him, just destroys him. That's kind of the attitude I've always had. I've always been inspired by people that overcame odds. Like one of my favorite wrestlers of all time was Ricky Steamboat. And Ricky Steamboat was a physical specimen, but you kind of always felt like he was fighting as the underdog, right?
Always.
It's that stubbornness and that bullheadedness. And like any kid, I went through a lot of things in school where I wasn't the most popular or whatever, and I might have been bullied, but everybody has, right? And you react in one of two ways. You either come back harder from it or you give up. And I try not to have a defeatist attitude. At one point in my life, I did have a defeatist attitude. And that all turned around for me whenever I lost weight. And I at one point in my life, I was pretty heavy. And I lost right around 100 pounds. And that's when that attitude kind of changed. Losing 100 pounds was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life, other than coming back from the knee injury and rehab. If I can handle that, I'm not going to let a 6'4" meathead intimidate me.
And speaking of meatheads, this is a perfect segue. You're reading my notes. I want to talk about some moments that you ended up in our children's laps. And it had to do a lot with Bill Collier. We were in White Oak, and he tossed you all over the place. At one point, we had to talk the boys back into coming to wrestling because they thought you were dead. They honestly thought there's no way in hell you're getting up from this. And Sylvan, to this day, still hates Bill Collier.
Oh, he can't stand him. We ran into him in the bathroom. My son had to go to the bathroom. I took him to the bathroom, and who's standing there? But Bill Collier. My son wouldn't go in the bathroom. Yeah, he was afraid of him. He hated him, and he hated him for what he did to you.
I'll tell you what, the two most brutal matches in my life were with the ladder match when I won the IWC heavyweight title.
We'll get to that.
And that match with Bill Collier. Bill Collier threw me into the third row. I believe he spine-busted me into the steel post. And there were many times in that match where I was like, I don't think I'm going to get back up. I think there was two different times where I think I was at a 9 count on the outside. And just out of sheer nerve responses, just somehow got into the ring. Like a twitch. I just kind of twitched up and got into the ring and like, why are you doing this to yourself? Stay down. And then another voice in me said, nah, screw that. Get up. Punch him in the face. That was one of the most wild matches of my life. I remember my mom was there and she was mortified.
She was.
She was mortified.
She really was.
I kind of take pride in being able to take an ass kicking and then get back up and give it back.
Another thing we want to talk about early on IWC, and then you already mentioned the ladder match. We definitely want to get into that. But you were with Team Big League, and you were kind of not the same person you are now. So how did you get in with Big League and kind of run amok there?
John McChesney knew about me before I came to IWC, from what I was told, and it was one of those things where me and John, I respected John a lot. I watched John whenever I was young. I remember watching IWC on public access TV. The people who got me to think about doing independent wrestling, obviously Hulk Hogan was my inspiration, but I can tell you there was 3 people: John McChesney, Super Hentai, Jason Gorey. I have a Jason Gorey shirt at my parents' house still from where I bought it at an IWC show. So I knew if I was going to go to IWC, I wanted to be aligned with John McChesney because he was the biggest player in the game at the time, and he had been for quite forever, really, since he had come onto the scene. Remember him wrestling like Loki and other awesome guys, and not only holding his own, but looking better at some points too. I mean, John is just a once in a lifetime performer, and whenever I came and he knew who I was beyond ecstatic, and we hit it off.
I want to mention Wardlow again very quickly. Wardlow's mother is one of the sweetest people I've ever met. And again, my son was really little and wasn't too sure about this guy. He was big and mean, but his mother was very sweet to my son and got him some stuff that he could take home with him. Wardlow's mom does not react well to her son taking a beating.
No mother does. Come on now.
I'm just curious, like, how does your mother take it when you're in a match and maybe your opponent's got the upper hand? How does she handle
it? Well, she's the loudest person in the audience for sure, and usually is throwing a sign up and down. Hopefully, it's right side up. I just had a fan actually come up to me. I had a fan come up to me and tell me that my mother cheered for me an entire match with her sign upside down.
Yeah, way to throw your mom under the bus. Way to throw your mom.
Yeah, well, mama nuts, a lot of brawn, brains, is that the other thing? No, I'm only kidding. My mom's my biggest supporter. She's amazing. She doesn't, so she gets mortified by the damage I take, but I don't think there's ever a second in her mind that she doesn't think that I'm not going to win. Like if I were ever to lose in front of her, I think she'd be shocked. She definitely thinks I'm Superman. She's, most mothers would say, hey, don't go back to wrestling. You've done enough. My mom has been begging me to get back in the ring since the day I got out of surgery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
Man,
that's awesome.
That's amazing.
My father, not a big fan. Pretty much every other relative or close person to me tells me I shouldn't be doing this. My mother is all in.
Pun included?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll go yeah on that one.
So now I want to talk about the night. And I know it was probably your worst night, and no disrespect to everybody in the locker room, the plumbers, this, that, or the other, but by far my greatest night and the greatest match I've seen in IWC was the night that you won the title. Throw yourself out from winning the title. The match between you and McChesney could have sold out anywhere. You guys put your bodies on the line and win during that match. You knew your leg was shattered.
Yeah, I knew it pretty much as soon as I hit the table that something was wrong. I had my first knee injury came about almost a year exactly prior to that, and I had been out for 9 months. My kneecap had dislocated, tore my patelliformal ligament.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and I didn't have surgery because the surgeon actually told me that he thought it would heal properly. It healed about 80% of the way, and then I came back and I wrestled for over a year with no issues. But I had started feeling a little weird right before that match, and I knew that something was wrong. Like, I wasn't able to do my normal weightlifting routine, but I wasn't going to back out of the match. There's no way. So I just remember going through the table, and I remember the table broke, and it came up and hit me in the back of the head, and it knocked me out for a second. And my wife's father was there, and he was screaming. I just remember coming back, and he was screaming, like, don't move his head. And I'm just thinking, like, who is yelling? And I look over, and it's, it's my father-in-law. Like, oh, hey. Where am I? But then the first thing I thought as soon as I came back was, man, my knee really hurts. And I remember hopping away and being like, this isn't good. So that was a gut check moment. And if you remember, I hopped back in and I hopped my way up the ladder and got the belt. And it was incredible. That match took a lot out of me. I didn't officially have a concussion, but definitely getting knocked out. And I took a very hard chair shot in that match that I remember rattled me pretty hard. And I believe there was a curb stomp into a ladder at one point, and that chipped my tooth. To say I probably wasn't the same ever again after that.
Yeah, that was like I said, you guys ripped down the house that night. You got the wife to love you that night. John, you weren't there because we had Sylvan. It was just an amazing night in IWC, and it's changed the outlook of everything. I don't know really the word I was looking for, but yeah, John, you got something before the finals?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you one more question about that match. So you alluded to the faction that you two were members of. How rewarding was it, knowing your history together, to be billed in such an important match for the biggest prize in the company and to do what you guys did? Like Mark said, I mean, you guys blew the roof off the place. How rewarding, how gratifying was that for the two of you? And did you guys talk about what you accomplished maybe after the match? Did you know during the match that you guys were doing something special?
Yeah, I definitely think I think we were at some point in the match, and John was punching me, and I think I remember just saying, is that all you got, John? And he gave me this look and started lighting me up, and I was lighting him up back. And it was just this moment where the crowd it was almost like a silence, but not the bad silence, where it was like being like, oh, like these guys are going to kill each other tonight for the best prize in the company, and in my opinion, in independent wrestling. And it was just a moment that couldn't be denied for me. Like, whether you like Jimmy Nuts or you think I'm corny or you think I'm a nerd or whatever, it didn't matter. That night, everyone was glued to the ring, and it was just like that undeniable feeling. And I believe after the match, everything that we had gone through over the months and months and months that me and John had feuded, I think afterwards, I just remember being like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, John. Because John McChesney was, like I said, him, Hentai, and Gory were like my idols. You kind of grow into wrestling, right? You come in for the Hulk Hogan's, but you stay for other people. You don't just, there's a ton of people that got into wrestling for Hulk Hogan and left, right? They don't watch wrestling anymore, or don't perform or whatever. But there's people who get you to stay, and it was the people who were grinding it out, and the people who were climbing the ladder from places like IWC that really made me stick around and made me grow even a deeper passion for the business. I fell in love with the business at that point. So not only was it awesome because I won the belt and we had this, as you put it, great match, which makes me feel great. Thank you. But it was also a moment where I just remember being 16. I was overweight. I had hair down to my ass, a broken pair of glasses, sitting in that crowd cheering on John McChesney. And I was like, man, I want to wrestle that guy. And I got to wrestle him on the biggest show of the year and one of the biggest matches of all time, and I won the belt. I mean, for me, that was one of the reasons why I didn't come back, is because, like, what stories left do I have to tell? What stories do I have to tell the fans who pay hard-earned money after something like that? For me, that was the pinnacle. I would never get bigger than that. But then I started realizing, and there's a lot of insecurity when you're hurt. You think about, this guy is better than me, and this guy's reaching the audience. Like, Jack Pollock blew up after I left, right? And I'm so happy that worked out for him, and that he's had success. I'm glad he's back. Can't wait to wrestle him, hopefully one day. But you start thinking, like, maybe I'm not good enough. But then you start thinking, like Mark and John, you guys talk about your kids and how invested they were in it, and you start thinking about, like, oh, like, that was me. Like, I was them at one point, right? Like, maybe I'll wrestle them one day at IWC for the belt. Like, maybe I'll be their John McChesney. You just start thinking about, like, it's not even so much about being the best. It's about affecting as many people as you possibly can and making an impact on people's lives. We talked about Roddy Piper, right? Roddy Piper touched millions of people, but even if he only touched a couple hundred of people, he would still be a very special person in life. And we only get, maybe if we're lucky, a century on this earth. So do what you love. Be good to people, and make sure that you leave a good mark. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Well, John, go ahead.
That's really well said, Jimmy. And the next story to be told, because you are back, is September 13th in Wheeling, West Virginia. It's called High Stakes 3. You're going to be there. You're making your return. Are you ready? And what's the story that we will be told on September 13th in Wheeling, West Virginia?
Well, I feel great. I'm ready. I'm excited. I think you're going to see some new shit from me. Pardon my French. Probably should have got a language filter.
We have it. We have it. We're good. We're good.
Perfect. I'm fired up. I can't help it. I'm fired up. I want to get in the ring. I want to get my hands on Bostic. And the story is very, very simple. The road to redemption leads to the Wheeling Casino September 13th with Dylan Bostic at the end of my road. I'm going to plow through him, and then I'm going to continue this journey past redemption and to the top. I am going to reclaim the throne. I am going to win the IWC Heavyweight Championship again. So it doesn't matter if it's Jack Pollock. It doesn't matter if it's Jackson Argos. It's mine. I want it back. I lost it on one leg. I have two now. I'm ready to fight. I'm more dangerous than ever. And I'm still nuts.
That's wonderful, Jimmy. We always end with these two questions as they're big. One, what advice do you give to the new, younger group of wrestlers coming up? You know, you're just going into training. You wish somebody told you this.
I wish someone would have just told me to love wrestling. Like, never stop loving wrestling, because we get caught up in what is wrestling, right? People are like, oh, you know, that's not wrestling, or this style's not good, and I feel like I fell into that a little bit, and the period I was coming up in wrestling, like some of the people I had to look up to weren't the most positive. And no one that I've mentioned here tonight, they're all great, but there's also, you know, people who aren't so great. And a lot of people put a lot of things in your head and make you think that it is a dog-eat-dog world, and it is. However, there's no reason why we can't be highly competitive with one another and still be, you know, massively in love with the thing that we're giving our bodies up for. Like, I know, and every wrestler knows this, that you're taking literally years off your life. You're doing damage that will never be reversed, and you're doing it because if you're doing it because you don't love it, then I'm not sure what to tell you. So the number one thing I can say to anyone that's new is just appreciate the moments where you're in the ring and you're on top, and even the bad. Take it all in. Take every single thing in, because when it's over, it's over. And I thought it was over for me. Thankfully, it's not. Thankfully, I'm better than ever. But you never know whenever it could just be gone.
Yeah, that's true in life and wrestling and everything. That's a great point. And finally, Jimmy, tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
All right. So as far as social media goes, I really just go on to one platform, and that's Twitter, and it's at the Flockavelli. Don't ask where the name came from, because I don't really remember. I just know it was a Waka Flocka rap album title, and I was like,
God.
18. I got Twitter. Dude, I've had Twitter since like 2008, and I thought it was a cool name, and I was just like, yeah, we're just going to do that, and I refused to change it. So I feel like it was my first name. I want to keep it. So you can follow me on there. I don't have a Facebook that's based for wrestling, and it's all personal, and I barely go on there as well. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, you're going to see some wrestling, you're going to see some jiu-jitsu, you're definitely going to see some fitness, and you're going to see a whole lot of coding. So if you're not really into the nerd thing, I'd probably steer clear. But yeah, give me a follow and check it out. I'm posting workout videos more often, and I'm hoping to get some videos up from jiu-jitsu and training with Max, because he's it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to train underneath a world champion like him. So definitely want to get some footage out on there. But yeah, that's where you can find me, and then you can also see me September 13th at the Wheeling Casino.
Yeah, the family is coming back out in large. You got the wife excited. You have the child excited. John wants one more shout out. So, Jimmy, thank you. And John, go ahead.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you realize what you've done here. We had a couple of kids in the family that were maybe like, oh, I'm too cool for this now, and I'm into other things. But Jimmy Nuts is back, so they're back. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You know, there are people invested in you, and that's why you're invested in them. So thank you. Really, we're glad you're back, and we're looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, I mean, coming back and coming through the curtain and seeing the reaction was just absolutely outstanding, and it meant the world to me. And I'm super glad that you guys had me on here, and I hope we can do it again. Maybe talk even a little bit more wrestling and get some opinions, and shoot the Scheiße, as they say in Germany.
And it's time to deliver now, right? It's time to deliver. Yeah,
that's right.
And I know you know that, but
I'm ready to go.
It's a tough business. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, you can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's absolutely not possible, at least to perform at the high level that I like to. And I'm both feet in, and like I said, I'm training 6 times a week in the gym with a great split and a great workout program, and I'm training jiu-jitsu 3 to 4 times with the world champion. What else can you really do? I mean, I'm ready.
That's awesome.
All right, Jimmy, we will see you September 13th in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Excellent. I'll see you guys there. Thanks for having me.
Wow, what an awesome interview that was. Jimmy Nuts back at IWC. What an inspirational story. What an inspirational human being, Mark.
Yeah, John, you said it best that, I'm going to throw Ethan under the bus. He was kind of that guy that was like, oh, I don't know. But Jimmy Nuts coming back is a resurgence to young wrestling fans and IWC.
It really is, and that speaks to his character and to the influence he has on wrestling fans. He mentioned in the interview, whatever it was, 20%, 30% might be the old school fans who remember him, but by the time he left that ring, he probably had 80 or 90% of the crowd behind him. I say 100%. I think he's saying 80 or 90 to be modest, but I think everybody was pretty much in his corner.
And I love that he watched Cage Fury 4 or 5 times to see me pushing women and children over.
Yeah, I think he said he's got a bit of an ego. I think if he's watching something, and I love the guy, but if he's watching something 4 or 5 times so he can see somebody mark out on him, then maybe he's got a little bit of an ego.
No way. That's blasphemy. You're crazy. He just wanted to see me. He's missed me for 3.5 years.
That must be it. That must be it.
I don't have an ego either.
Right. We reached out to him on social media while he was out, and it was bittersweet because it was cool to be in touch with him, but we weren't sure we'd ever see him again in this capacity. So it's pretty cool that he's on his way back. I'm pumped for September 13th in Wheeling.
Yeah, I can't wait till he gets his hand on Bostic. And if this is just a stepping stone, a rung in that ladder that Jimmy fell off of, a rung in that ladder to climb back to get what is his, and that's the IWC Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, it's definitely a step in that direction. It's a rung in the ladder, but you can't underestimate Dylan Bostic. To call him a stepping stone or to take him lightly, I think would be a mistake. I don't think Jimmy Nuts is taking him lightly. The guy's been around too long to take anybody lightly. But yeah, to your point, if he wins, which I hope he does, this is going to be a big step in that direction for him.
John, once again, thank you for coming on to probably one of our favorite, if not the favorite, spotlight thus far, and co-hosting this one with me. Welcome back, Jimmy freaking Nuts.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This was awesome. This was a no-brainer. I had to be here for this one. Thank you, buddy.
John, remember one thing, though. Just because you're
What's
trash,
that?
just because you're trash doesn't mean you can't do great things. It's called a garbage can, not a garbage cannot.